Previously in Slow Horses.
River's search for more information about Adam Lochhead, the man who had planned to kill his grandfather, brought him to a small town named Lavande, situated in the French countryside. Asking around at a specific bar, the name of which was found on a piece of paper in the pockets of Lochhead, River then reached an old abandoned estate house called Les Arbres. However, he was attacked by a goon at this place, who tried to kill him after setting the house on fire, and River had to be saved by a different man who had been following him around ever since he had reached Lavande. This man seemed to be working on someone else's orders, and he knocked River unconscious right after saving him from the goon. River Cartwright wakes up to find himself inside a small room, clearly being kept hostage in a house somewhere in France. As he looks out the window, it is revealed that the place is not very far from Les Arbres, but what is more concerning is the fact that a group of men are standing outside, as if waiting for him to come out. A little while later, the man who had knocked River out and brought him here comes to the room, pointing a shotgun at him, and states that someone else will be joining them shortly to have a word with him. When this new individual, a woman by the name of Natasha, arrives, all confusion is finally cleared, and a little more about the two vengeful Frenchmen in London is revealed. The young man who had entered David Cartwright's home, pretending to be his grandson and intending to kill the veteran MI5 spy, was known as Bertrand in his home in Lavande. Natasha happens to be Bertrand's mother, but their relationship is very estranged, to say the least. When Natasha's cousin, Victor, saw River in the town of Les Arbres, he believed the MI5 agent to be his nephew and, therefore, followed him around. In episode 2, Victor was seen consulting with someone about the matter, and it was actually Natasha that he had been talking to, telling her how her estranged son was back in the country. The real identity of Adam Lochhead, or Bertrand, has an unusual story behind it, which is revealed when River shows Natasha the photograph he had found of the young man and a few others at the Les Arbres house. The photo was of a few young men, along with an older man who seemed to be their leader or a guide of sorts, and Natasha identifies this man as Frank Harkness. She reveals that Frank had a lot of unusual ways about him and was possibly involved in a lot of crime as well, and that one of his characteristic habits was to establish romantic relationships with women and take them to his house at Les Arbres. He would get them pregnant and they would give birth, following which he ended his relationship with them and allowed the women to leave. Based on this brief information provided by Natasha, it becomes clear that Frank Harkness wanted to have his group of blind followers who would do anything that he asked them to do, especially since he raised the children alone, without the intervention of their respective mothers. Similarly, Frank had wooed Natasha, and Bertrand was born from this strange relationship, but the man taught the boy never to consider Natasha his mother. Therefore, whenever she tried to meet her son or reach out to him afterward, Bertrand never reciprocated, and he just acted like she did not exist. Instead, Bertrand acted like a petty criminal and goon after growing into a teenager, and he harmed many residents at Lavande through his actions. This is exactly why several angry residents gathered in front of Victor's house, for just like Victor, they believed that River was actually Bertrand, who had returned to France, and so they wanted their revenge. It was most definitely Frank Harkness who had sent Bertrand to England to kill David Cartwright, and another shocking discovery in this regard is that the man who had carried out the Westacres bomb blast, Robert Winters, had also been a part of the same group. Natasha recalls Robert as Yves, who was mistreated and subjected to a lot of torture and abuse since his childhood days at the Les Arbres house. Yves was also a son of Frank, meaning that the man had ordered the bombings in London too. When River was going through the house in the previous episode, it was Frank who had attacked him and attempted to kill him. According to the MI5 agent, Frank was possibly getting rid of evidence at the time, and so he did not want an intruder from England to disturb his work. As of now, it seems like Frank Harkness has some old animosity against David Cartwright, because of which he had planned this double attack in London. It is even possible that the bombing at Westacres was supposed to be a distraction that would keep all police and intelligence officers in the country busy so that Bertrand could kill David and leave England without his crime being discovered. However, River still needs to carry out his investigation in France for longer to find out the exact details about the crimes, but his work is interrupted when the angry residents break into Victor's home to exact revenge. Thinking River to be Bertrand, they chase him out of the house and out of the locality as well, as River has to hijack a moped and ensure his safety first. The once revered and powerful MI5 director, David Cartwright, finally seems to be losing his mind, as he genuinely struggles to remember anything from the last few days. The old man is still burdened by the guilt of having killed his grandson, and he then also mentions something about the bombing at Westacres Center. Although Catherine does not delve any further into the matter, it almost seems like David Cartwright knew something more about the bomb attacks than others in the administration. He then vehemently states that he needs to pass on some information to the MI5 first desk, and Catherine has to pretend to be the director's secretary and keep David calm by lying to him about the director's busy schedule. Although she keeps him occupied with a cup of tea and the pretense of him waiting at the park office, a different problem arises at the Slough House office. The new dog's head, Emma Flight, had been tasked with investigating the supposed murder of River Cartwright and the subsequent disappearance of David. By now, she had realized that River must be alive, considering the lack of reaction from his Slough House colleagues, and so she confronts Jackson Lamb about the same. Lamb obviously has experience avoiding such sticky situations, but Flight is seemingly different from her previous counterparts, as she does not mind getting her office involved during these instances. Flight arrests Lamb on the charge of obstructing an investigation, and just as she is about to take him away from the Slough House office, the man offers to give her David Cartwright's location. At this point, Lamb knows that keeping River's personal mission to France a secret would be more helpful for his survival, and he decides to sell out David instead, considering that the old man has no idea about where his grandson is. Flight lets him go and rushes to the house of Catherine Standish in order to arrest the sole suspect in the murder case, but Lamb also sends Louisa to try and stop the arrest somehow. Louisa is unable to distract Flight as she originally planned, and the dog's chief barges into Catherine's apartment. However, she is unable to find David Cartwright anywhere and believes that Lamb has played a crude joke on her, misleading her to the wrong place. However, it was Catherine who had pulled off a clever plan, as she had figured out the possibility of the MI5 coming to her place in search of David, and so had hidden him in a different apartment already. Catherine reveals to Louisa that she has been cat-sitting for a neighbor of hers, meaning that she has the keys to this nearby apartment, and so she had hidden David there. But when the two women enter the apartment to check on David, they realize that the man has left the place through a back door. This new development ensures that the next few episodes are going to be way more intense, as a forgetful and unmindful old man wandering off by himself, especially when someone is trying to kill him, is a recipe for disaster. Jackson Lamb reaches out to his old associate Sam Chapman in order to find out more about David's connection with the French town of Lavande. Although the two men decide to meet at a laundromat, which was indeed a usual meeting spot for them and possibly other MI5 agents, Chapman informs Lamb that a man has been tailing him for some time now. Frank Harkness actually orders one of his men to follow Chapman, with the original plan being to kill him at some empty corner of the streets. Lamb employs his two agents, Marcus and Shirley, to ensure Chapman's safety, and he himself also tracks down the contact in order to protect him. Although the assassin can find Chapman despite the latter's best efforts to hide, the Slough House agents are able to stop him from committing the murder. Lamb then drives a taxi into the warehouse where this fight is taking place and drives it into the attacker, making it evident that he does not hesitate to get violent if his plans require it. His determination to protect Chapman at all costs also has a very particular reason. Sam Chapman used to work as David Cartwright's bodyguard before he retired from the MI5 and became a private investigator. As per Lamb's instructions, the new Slough House employee, Moira Tregorian, had used her sources to find any connection between Cartwright and Lavande. Although Cartwright had never gone to France by official records, his bodyguard at the time, Chapman, had indeed traveled to the country and the very town of Lavande. Thus, Lamb wants to know what exactly happened at the place in the past, which would perhaps reveal the reason behind Frank Harkness's vengeful actions at present. Although Lamb and his associates can keep Chapman safe from the assassin, the latter manages to flee the scene despite getting crashed into by a speeding car. This is not the best possible scenario, considering that he will be able to report the incident to Harkness, and he might take even worse steps, perhaps even ordering another bomb attack. But it also saves Lamb from the trouble of being hunted by the law for being a murderer, especially since Emma Flight will surely try to arrest him now that he has directly lied to her regarding David's location.